Oh, so someone's
Welcome.
up there?
And we're on channel 79.
Okay.
Welcome to January 27th special meeting of Town Government Structure Administration Committee, better known as TGS&A. We're being recorded for channel 79, and Tyler Stimson is the man behind the controls. Thank you, Tyler, for running the system. Would it be good to just go around the table and say hello and your name and what district you're from and what your favorite color is?
I'm Joe Michelli, I'm Dull.
You're dull?
I'm Dull.
And what district?
Dull in what district?
4.
Dull in District 4.
Ann Gale Health, District 2. And I can't think of anything. My color is green, light green.
Jessica Cahill, District 1. I don't know, blue for the blue wave.
Beth Pope, District 5. I like shades of blue.
I thought you were going to say shades of black.
I know, today I'm black.
Matt Baldwin, District 6. I like this green, anything neon catches my eye.
I'm David Bain, District 5, and my color is, I don't know, psychedelic. I was going to say Grateful Dead, but
Yeah.
that's a color too in my book.
Hi, how are you? You're not city?
Well, I'll be late, okay.
Missed the introduction, which was to say your name and what district you're from, and we're being recorded on 79.
My name is Joseph Barning, I'm from District 6.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. What we ought to do just briefly is to look at the agenda to see what we're going to be doing this evening. We will momentarily review the minutes from the last meeting. I'd like to point out that we got a clarification on that. People vote to approve the minutes. It doesn't mean that they attended the meeting or agree with everything. What they're voting is that the minutes are properly presented and part of the record. So we don't have to have any abstentions on voting for the minutes when it comes up. We'll do a little bit of welcome to TGS&A, and then we have probably the most significant part of the meeting is to talk about the changes to Appendix B. Our guest this evening is Jack Davis, Chairman of the Finance and Budget Committee that has worked heroically to get this doggone thing on wheels and along with its supplementary information. So Jack, I'm going to ask you to join us up here at the table for us. And we have two other assignments from rules, one of which we may sideline because it's not quite ready for prime time. In this package we have, by the way, I've missed some emails because they've come to my .gov account, which I'm having a fight with. So I appreciate you using my, I'm going to send a corrected version of this out to everybody. If you would like to put down your cell phone or your second phone number, then fine. But I would like to get a good email, a reliable email from you that you prefer. This is different from the town clerk's list that she maintains and does, does an official thing. But this list, these addresses are for us. So again, I'll shoot it around in case anybody has any changes to it. We have the materials about the TGS&A committee. This is our first meeting of the year, and then we can get to work on some of the Appendix D material. Questions? Okay. First item is to look at the minutes from our prior meeting, which was May 13th. Does anyone have any corrections or changes to it? May I have a motion to approve it? Thank you. Unanimous. A vote in favor of approving minutes? Second. Got a second. And discussion approved. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Looking back underneath your agenda, it's titled Background of Information on Charter Code and Appendices. In the good old days, we had book like this of the code, of the charter and code. Hard to maintain, expensive to maintain, and I stumbled over it last week, and I'm looking to give it to anybody. It's right up to date to 2018.
Which means it's not up to date.
In the front of it, where's my little marker here? This part is the charter, and the remaining sections are the code, with a few pages at back with appendices A to D. In general, the charter part defines what our elected officials should be doing. They'll systematically go through that. And then the code defines what the appointed and employed officials and employed do. And the appendix, there are 4 of them that we know about. One is the special acts. B is how the RTM is conducted. C is some administrative regulations, and table D is a table of fines. Regulations, like zoning regulations and the Harbor Commission regulations and all that, are not in this. They're handled separately by the commissions and boards that are responsible. Brief history here, up until 1959, the town was governed by what is called special acts of the state legislature. And they had been added fairly willy-nilly in 1911. There was a special act for a Board of Finance, and then planning and zoning, 1925, and on and on. And that's why when you look at the way the charter is organized, you don't see RTM right at the top, where it ought to be. But it's buried down in the sequence, because that's the way the RTM was not set up officially until 1951. And then in 1959, we moved to the current setup. There have been 2 attempts to revise the charter in 1999 and 2008. Very good, earnest committee members were appointed to those 2 charter commissions. They prepared their documents, which were voted down by the town. So they were viewed as a little too radical or not particularly handling the issues in the way that they could be handled. So after that 2008
Debacle?
Cess-
I was part of that.
cessation, you weren't on the committee.
I was on the Board of Selectmen.
And then the debacle, then, okay,
Yes.
you can have a debacle. And
It was a debacle.
after,
There was a lot of
I was
good
trying
things
to
that were tossed out.
I tried to explain it as kindly as possible. In 2009, 2010, Jack and I were serving on TGS&A at that point, and we had certain items within the charter that if the Charter Revision Commission was not going to change it, then we could change it by individual acts. And I listed down a few of those in the next page.
They were basically low-hanging fruit.
I love that phrase, low-hanging fruit. That drove us crazy for a while.
Yeah, people shot down the charter revision in 2008 because there were a couple of issues that people were upset with, but there were a whole series of things that were not very controversial that TGS&A.
It's also an issue of home rule, the way
Yeah.
the thing was set up, that if the charter had been amended or revised at that point, there would have been a heavier state hand.
Yes.
In the way we.
I thought that was a red
Yeah.
herring, but that was part of the disagreement at the
So,
time.
Yeah.
I'm really like somebody who really wants to take this thing, because right now, it's so easy to go into Municode off of the town website and look up anything you have to, and you can print it out, and you can download it for future references as we do. If there's a change to the code, that can be made in the RTM meeting by a simple majority. The change to the more significant charter, it needs to be notice published in the newspaper, have a public hearing, and then a cooling off period from the public hearing until it can be taken up by the RTM in 60 days. Very traditional way of changing the charter, a little bit burdensome, but that's what we do from time to time. The next page is a listing of activities that TGS&A has been involved in over the last couple of years. And there have been some very interesting things, such as the blight ordinance and then the plastic bag, bring your own bag activity a couple of years ago. And then this is not an all-inclusive list. There are a lot of minor maintenance changes that have been made to the charter and code. Well,
If I may add something
You may.
else. So one of the things, I only spent 1 year on TGS&A. It's the best.
it was a big year.
It was the best, it's the best committee to start your RTM experience at. And I've always said this is the most powerful committee in the RTM. It's not F&B. We may deal with numbers, but you guys control the ordinances for the town. So with that, you can modify things or look at things. And one of the things, I was already off TGS&A, and Karen Armour was the moderator at the time. We were looking at things. And I came across that we had all our fees in the ordinances, which is nice. It means anytime you change a fee, you should change the ordinance. And we hadn't changed them for 15 years, which means we were charging people contrary to what the ordinances were saying, which is a real nice class action should anybody have really wanted to take that up. And so what we did, with the exception of P&Z, which by state law needs to have their fees in the ordinances, we pulled all the ordinances out, all the fees out of the ordinances to go onto a schedule. And now, should they be changed, they're approved not by the RTM, but when the Board of Selectmen approves their budget based upon the fees that they have changed, that changes and authorizes the change to the appendix. And so that made changes of fees a lot easier. Otherwise, every time we did the budget in May, we might have to approve 20 different ordinance fee changes at the same time. So,
That was one of the low-hanging fruit in 2000.
well, once we found it, it was low-hanging fruit.
All right, moving to what sort of is the major topic of the evening, is to look at Appendix B and where we stand as a introduction or sort of a ramp, an on-ramp. Over the last couple of years in the Rules Committee, there was always a discussion of when a matter came up to be considered by the RTM, assigning the matter out to a committee. Quite often it's F&B, but then otherwise is it Park and Rec, or is it Planning and Zoning, or what. So the gentleman to my left took the initiative of preparing a list of the different entities within the town. And I thought it'd be about 15 or 20, but it turned out to be 108, something like that.
Maybe a little more now. Who
Maybe
knows?
even a little more than that. I haven't counted them lately. But you have a copy here of the document that is titled Committee's Responsibility, and we'll come back to that word, responsibility, in a little bit. But you can. This was distributed in early January to every member of the RTM, and I'm not sure that everybody got it. That this, if you're on a committee, these are the entities that you have oversight, purview within your scope, it's in your jurisdiction, it's in your responsibility. We're searching for a good word for that. But we called it initially the Matrix, and it sounded like a bad science fiction film. So now we went to
Good science fiction film, wait a minute.
Went to
I like
scope.
The Matrix.
So it wasn't it was the Matrix document, and for a while it's been the scope document. In the proposed legislation, I did a keyword search and its scope is mentioned 10 times. So if we decide to call it jurisdiction or something like that, it's going to be pretty much a global search and replace, and not to get a whole bothered about it. But so this list then needed to be dovetailed or mitered in to the appendix, to section 6 of Appendix B. The Appendix B has to do with the way the RTM works, and section 6 is how the committees work, the Rules Committee and the standing committees. And so once you bring up a scope document, then you need to anchor it within the legislation, and that's the nice piece of 11 pages that we have right now to look at. What I would like to do is to do the fastest ever walkthrough of these 11 pages, asking you to hold your questions or comments, but merely mark the margins so that we'll come back to it. In other words, I'm only going to take me about 2 minutes to do this, but then we'll open it up and go through it in a little bit better detail. What you'll see on this handout is a left and right. Left being the current version, and the right being the proposed version. You'll see on the first page there's housekeeping, changes in phrases to make it better. Page 2, the larger paragraph has to do with how the moderator of the RTM is chosen and put into place. Page 3, you see that there's nothing on the left, because over here on the right are the implementing paragraphs that have to do with tying the committees in with the scope document of what their responsibilities are. And that's sort of a friend of mine would say that's a whiskey in the highball. This is the thing that drives things along. Next page, there are 7 committees, just as there always have been 7 committees. But there we go. On the appendix, on the proposed code, you'll see the 7 are listed down just the same, except there's a little paragraph there, which I call the David Bain Memorial Paragraph, because last time we went through that, David said, suppose we have another committee. How's that implemented? How does that happen? And so at David's suggestion, we've got that in there. Going on to the next page, again, we have text on the right-hand side where there is no format, a predecessor for it, and it has to do with the workings of the standing committees. There are 7 standing committees. We're one of them. It's how the other 6 interface with the Rules Committee and with the documents. And then the next page has to do with the actual definitions of the responsibilities of the committees. And you can see that much of the text walks over, and yet there's some very interesting enhancements to the duties and responsibilities of the committees, consistent with this whole upgrade to make it specific of what their duties are and modernize it. Our favorite example is on the next page when you come down to Public Works. If you look at the fine print in the Public Works description, 3 lines from the bottom, water, sewage, and incineration facilities. Well, I haven't had an incinerator in my lifetime, and so it is to be used as sort of an example of the thing. It was time to upgrade and revise all of these committee descriptions. Following that, we have a description of how people are staffed on the Rules Committee and the standing committees. There's sort of like a dark ages between the, not dark ages, but an interregnum between the date of an election and then when we have the general meeting, the organization meeting of the RTM, and you get your districts organized, and then you get your committees, your standing committees organized. There's a blackout period there. And so this addresses the fact that the members of the committee will serve until their replacement is identified.
I'm going to cut him off for a second.
Please do.
There's two things. First of all, part of the old definition of these committees said that the RTM had authority over personnel. We never had authority over personnel. So there were a lot of things that, when I read it, and I spoke to then the town administrator, Kate Bush, her mouth dropped. And the best word to describe it is the British term gobsmacked. So the fact is that they weren't correct.
Well, RTM is not a human resources department.
So there were a lot of other things. in there as well.
Actually, I want to romp through this before and
Right.
get down to some details. The page after that, I wish I had, my apologies for not numbering these pages, but it's part 6 is all part 6, section 5. There are a couple of paragraphs that have been deleted in the interest of deferring to Robert's Rules of Order. There were items in here that were redundant or not really necessary to be carried forward. The interesting one, next one from the bottom, what it used to say, the moderator may attend any meeting of any standing committee. Well, hello, the public can attend a meeting, there's no need to designate the moderator may do it. But the new paragraph has a nice little twist to it. It says, the moderator may attend any executive session of a standing committee, which is something that needs to be put out there. Next page, it's fairly, walks over fairly, actually, not particular changes. The very last page, we've always said that we're changing section 6 of Appendix B, having to approve. But this last page is changing to 5, which has to do with Robert's Rules of Order. And it needed to be said, and this is a good opportunity to change it. So now when we go to the RTM eventually to get this thing passed, we'll be saying some changes to both 5 and 6.
Well, first of all, let's give credit to that to Beth, who found that change. And when we read it, it was, we have a section in 6 which deals with the with the committees. And so we have certain language there. And in section 5 deals with how we run the RTM meeting as a whole. So we're going to have it in both places, but we at least should be consistent. So it was a great find, and I do have a question on that when we're going to go through it.
I also played Trivial Pursuit. The old one says 10th edition, 2000.
Yeah.
And I looked it up today. There's an 11th edition in 2011, and the current one's the 12th edition that went in 2020. So I really get involved in that. So the new version says the current copy, in a master stroke.
I think that's easier.
Yeah, well, it's also better English
Now,
than what we had.
I promised that we would not go, I promised, or I indicated that we would not go through this sentence by sentence, but in the quick romp through that we just did, surely you have questions or clarifications.
Well, I want to
That
go
are
through
requested.
what I have first so that I can answer certain questions, because there were several documents that we received.
So in other words, you got the answers before we have the questions.
Yeah, I want to go through what the changes.
With that in mind, Jack, go ahead with the answers.
I want to go. I also want to give a slight different spin. The scope document was done for 2 reasons. Number one is to identify areas within certain committees of which you're supposed to just follow, report on, make recommendations when necessary, and that. And a lot of people who were on committees didn't know that they actually had this within their jurisdiction, their purview. The other thing that it encourages people to do, that if you're on, let's say, Park and Rec, but you're very much into the coastal, well, you know what, you can say to the chair, I want to follow the Coastal Waters Commission. So it gave things that people could then follow within that area, not just, I'm just going to deal with the Park and Rec department, because there's a lot of other things. It deals with departments, it deals with boards and commissions, it deals with grants, it deals with other activities of what we get involved. And also there's certain advisory committees that come and go. So throughout the year, that what was called now the scope document, or whatever they want to call it, I still like the matrix. The matrix is really there to be a living document. And so it's the responsibility of committee chairs as well as rules, because there's the operations meeting that they have, is to go around and say, the Board of Selectmen just set this up. Or all of a sudden, a couple years ago, the Board of Ed set up a communications committee. So let's put it down there, it gets on the list, it's covered by this group, or that, so that we can identify what's happening. We're in the process of doing the 10-year plan of conservation and development and other things that we're required to do every 10 years. So that predominantly falls in planning, zoning, and housing. But Public Works also has an input into that. So we just want to make sure that they're listed as secondary. The primary is the one that introduces the resolution. The secondary gives reports on the detail. So you'll see that many of what we're getting, F&B is going to be introducing bonding, because we're the liaison between the Board of Finance to the RTM. So we'll introduce the bonding resolution and talk to you about the financials. But if it's going on a sewer, you're going to hear from Public Works. If it's going for a park, you're going to hear from the Park and Rec Committee, because we're not really going to get into the details, all right? We're just going to say, here's the financials, and it's the responsibility of the committees to give their committee report. It's also the right, which we did here, of any committee to report on any topic that they feel that they want to. Believe it or not, the old ordinance, that the existing one, and it's funny because you'll hear our moderator goes, is there any other committees that want to report? They weren't allowed to report. The existing ordinance says the only committees that can report are the ones that were assigned by rules, the Rules Committee. So it also had throughout, any meeting which had a quorum. Well, guys, we're following Robert's Rules of Order. You can't have a meeting if you do not have a quorum. So we can take all that language out. The other thing is, this is really, the revision to Appendix B is really just clarifying what the RTM always had the right to do. We're not empowering them anymore. We're just substantiating, you always had this right. And we want to make sure that you understand what rights you have. Now go do it, all right? And so that's part of it. It's to clarify and not necessarily empower, but just say, this is what we have. We're a very important body as it comes to the checks and balances of this town. And quite honestly, any town that has a Board of Finance and an RTM makes the RTM one of the budget-making authorities of the community. Otherwise, it would just be the Board of Finance. So the 6 or 7 that have both of them in the state of Connecticut, both the RTM and the Board of Finance are the budget-making authorities based upon what ordinance says of the town. So that's part of the clarification that comes in.
Thank you. What do we do next?
Okay.
Perhaps I think if we go around,
No,
just wanted-
can I go through this?
No,
Because
no,
this may
of
answer
course.
some questions, and then we can go around for
But
anything
feel
that's
free to
additional.
ask questions.
Okay, so Beth asked a bunch of questions that were really good. It wasn't a dissertation, it was only 30 pages, no. But,
In February of when, what? we're-
no, actually, it was, I believe it was November of 2023. And we were getting ready to move this document forward. And when Frank and I read this document, we went and said, we want this document that we're putting forward to be a good document. And we want it to be something that will live through some time. It's not another 20 years, mind you, but at least be the right thing that's given the appropriate thought to it. And so we pulled it back. And unfortunately, as I was saying to Beth earlier, last year was a really interesting budget year, and then I took some time off to just recharge. And so we're really first getting back to it now. But I want to go through some of the points that Beth raised, because I think they're good points, and I also want them on the public record, because other people in the RTM may have similar questions of why we're doing certain things, and at least there can be a discussion of what certain things have, not, and if we agree or not. So we're going to go through there. The other thing that's important to understand, this is not the Frank and Jack document. This is a document, and we were talking about one instance. We were at Beth's prior committee, and we're going through something, and it was actually Rachel Taylor, because I remember she's sitting right over to my left, and she said, well, you know, shouldn't we add this? And I said immediate the answer, yes. And we put it in, and it got into the next revised document. So this has a lot of input from a lot of people. At the end of the day, I go away. This is a TGS&A document that will be presented to the RTM. I can explain certain parts, and I was brought in because a lot of this has to do with budget and the finances and how we do it. And unfortunately, while some of you have experience, I know, having been on other committees, TGS&A is the only committee that doesn't have budgetary responsibility or doesn't face off against another department. So I was brought in to handle some of the how I know the town works from a budget perspective and what we're expecting out of the committees. So, but I'm going away. I got budgets to do. So, so let's go through some of the ones that we think. One of the areas is in in the section 1B. So section 1B, the original one says that one member may not be on more than 2 standing committees. We deleted that. And part of the reason, there's a couple reasons, but we've been doing with one person to one committee, and I verified this with Seth, who I think is the longest serving member. He joined the RTM in 1985, and we haven't had it for 40 years. There's other reasons why you don't want it, but the fact of the matter is, so we're bringing it to what's been the practice for the last 40 years. One person goes on one committee. The rest of it stays the same, that each district has to have at least one member on each of the committees. The acting moderator. So this is section 1D. So the RTM has a situation where we vote on an acting moderator. Now, that's because we cannot tell somebody that they can't run for vice chair of the Rules Committee. And typically, it's the moderator. If the moderator's not there, the vice chair runs the meeting, all right? But we had an instance, I'm not sure if it was once or twice, but recently, where the vice chair happened to be the chair of a committee that had a report on a resolution. So at that time, we had the acting moderator take over for that resolution so that the committee chair could make a report and then took back control of the meeting after that resolution was completed. Typically, what happens is the acting moderator and the vice chair are the same individual, but that's why that's in there. So I know that it was mentioned that Greenwich does a moderator pro temp, I believe, and part of the difference is, just to understand, we're nonpartisan. Greenwich is partisan. And so they want to make sure that they are in control if the moderator isn't there, which party is controlling who the pro temp moderator is. So it's a little bit different in how we operate in that regard. But,
May I interrupt?
yeah, no, this is why we're going to
This is like a dumb
have,
question, and it goes back to the first thing. So I also thought that the chair of each standing committee was on the Rules Committee. Is
No.
that-
No.
No.
no, it just happens by happen chance.
Okay, so you just like, all right.
Because every district just elects two
Two,
members of the district,
right.
and a week later is when the chairs of the various committees are elected at the
Okay, so
committee organizational meeting.
it can happen. For some reason, I had in my head also
I think
that.
of the 6 committees, there's one, but right now, Frank Edelman, who's both a district chair and a committee chair.
No,
It happens.
no.
So the way I
No,
read.
no.
True?
We have, we're not talking district chairs, we're talking committee
Rules.
chairs. No, committee chairs.
Yeah, like,
So at one time, last year, not this current legislative, we had Frank, myself, F&B, Adele from Park and Rec, Mark Adaletta from Public Works, on the Rules Committee, which made it real easy because like the vice chair of Public Health and Safety is on Rules as well. So it made it real easy to know what was coming down the road. But Mark is no longer the chair of Public Works, so the only chairs that are currently on that committee is myself, I represent District 3, and I happen to be the chair of F&B, Frank from District 4, and Adele, who's also from District 3, who chairs Park and Rec. We're there by happen chance.
got it. Okay, sorry. Thank you for the clarification.
No, that's,
Keep going.
okay.
The way I read this
Move
Rule
along.
D, the Rules Committee shall designate an acting moderator, but the acting moderator doesn't have to be from the Rules Committee, right?
No,
Right.
it does
Can be
not.
anybody, any RTM member.
That's correct.
Okay.
So, okay, Section 1E, there was a change on the time limit, and part of this was brought on due to September meetings periodically might be changed based upon the Jewish holidays. And so that sort of loused up when we were starting certain things, at what time the September meeting would be. So, but Beth suggested that we should put in some time frame going the other way, and I thought that was a good idea. So I spoke to Lois. This is Section 1, I gotta read my glasses, E. And so we, instead of having, what we've added now, which is in the document you have, is 3 weeks prior to. So that gives, that's about the time when they start to look for moderators and other things like that. And so that seemed to fit in, and I went to the person who's been chairing that committee for the longest time and said, what do you think? And she said 3 weeks' work. So we did that, and that's now in the document. But it was a good idea to put a time frame in there, so we did it. Going to, we have 3 new sections, which are there. Part of it was added because we thought additional information was needed, and you're going to see that. So we do some clarifications, we do some modifications, and that's what's in those sections. Not going to go through them. But this is a working session. So if there's things we can agree to today, I get into version 2. For things that you guys need to think about and discuss, it's going to be at the next meeting. I want this, and I think Frank does also, I'd like this to be a really good document, so I'm not under time constraint. Seth is, I'm not. All right? This will be brought to the RTM when this committee feels that it's appropriate to bring it to the RTM.
Let's go.
All right. So we did the change we mentioned in 9, Section 5. That was a great catch. So I want to go to Section 9, which is the last page of the document that you have, and ask this committee to ponder on something. Let me get to my document. So if we go to Section 5, Item 9,
Part 5, Section 9.
Part 5, Section 9, thank you. We're only referring to Robert's Rules of Order. Now, in the equivalent section that we deal with the RTM, we mention that we comply with both Connecticut's Freedom of Information Act and the most current Robert's Rules of Order. I don't know, and I leave it up to this committee, whether or not in Part 5, Section 9, we should also put down that the meetings that we're holding is going to, for the full RTM meeting, will also be consistent with the Connecticut Freedom of Information Act and put it in here.
I mean, I think that's unnecessary because it's state law. We're required to. So why not say we're also governed by the United States Constitution, the Constitution of the state of Connecticut, and all other laws of the state? Because it's self-evident.
Fine.
I mean, I don't think we need it in the other section.
Because
I
those
saw
are
it there.
open, RTM meetings are, anyone can
Right.
go.
Right.
I mean, it's a reminder to people that we're required or subject to the state FOI laws, but.
That's why we
FOIA
have
laws,
it in
but-
the committees, to remind them
right,
that they
but
are.
it's-
But I don't
it's kinda
think it was
superfluous.
necessary here, but I wanted to ask this committee what they felt.
I
Fine,
don't think it's necessary, yeah.
that's fine.
One thing before you go on, the "and" is not right in the.
No, yeah, I corrected that,
You
I'm
did,
sorry,
oh.
yeah. I caught that subsequently. It
Got
was
it.
an AN and I forgot the
Yeah.
D.
What I'd like to know is we make so many references to Robert's Rules of Order, and we hear Seth talk about it all the time at the meetings, and we never make the rules actually available to RTM members. Why is that?
It's a book, they can
You
buy it
have
if
to
they
purchase
want.
it, right? But how many people
I
are going to
agree,
do
I
that?
don't think anybody knows what it.
What-
I know.
It would be
So-
nice if we just put it online, but,
Well, I think there are copyright issues with that. but-
yeah.
But
well,
it should be made available, or at least, for somewhere where people can review it, because otherwise Robert's Rules of Order is whatever the moderator says it is. And that's a little funky, in my
Or
opinion.
town council.
Or town council.
I think it was a couple of years ago, maybe 3, they had some tapes that were recommended. And people would watch them at their own choosing. That was about as far as we went.
Well, and even that's better than nothing, which is currently what we have.
Duly noted. Keep going.
Okay.
Duly noted.
So now we're on Section 2. And, I will tell you, there used to be 8 committees. I have no idea when one was eliminated, but in the old days, rather than doing assignment to committees online, there was this big stick board where you took people's names and put it on. And there was an 8th committee there that is no longer part of
It
it.
was,
So-
now it's public health and safety?
Yeah, I think that's what they
Safety, yeah.
combined.
And what was it?
It was safety and then public health,
Oh, I
and they
see.
combined
So they
the
combined.
two.
Mhm.
Okay,
Got it.
so
Good.
that brings us, no, we're not. That brings us to the David Bain clause, because it's right that the Rules Committee can decide we need to add one, take one away, combine, and other things like that. But, you know, this committee really should have a similar authority to do that, because you guys are town government and administration. So even if Rules does decide to do it, it should be referred back to TGS&A for doing some changes. So I put together some verbiage of which I will send out rather than people trying to scribble it out.
Well, should the creation of the committees actually be subject to an RTM vote?
Yes, that's what it says, so
Okay.
we're going to leave it at that. So what I'm adding is that at its discretion and subsequent vote of the RTM, the Rules Committee or the TGS&A Committee may revise the foregoing by adding, deleting, combining the standing committees of the RTM. Should the Rules Committee revise the foregoing, any such revision shall be referred to the TGS&A Committee for adjudication, change to Part 6, Section 2, and any other such action deemed appropriate by said committee. So, if
So
we're...
basically, nothing can be done without the two rules and TGS&A being,
If we're going to add one,
In
we
the
better
court.
have a definition of what that committee's doing. We better change the definition if we're separating two together. Whatever it is, it means this section has to be changed, and Rules does not have the authority to change that. Only this committee does. So, by the way, that was Beth's catch also, but I thought about it and I said, you know, you're right. So I put in some verbiage. Look, there are people who speak and write English much better than I do. I will send it out, since we have a couple of attorneys here, and you guys can adjudicate whether or not I did it properly. That brings us to Section 4, Section 3A, where we start talking about scope. So there's three words that I came up with. A member of my committee, who's also an attorney, came up with the word, yeah, I know, jurisdiction. The other words that we came up with just recently is authority, administration, or purview. But similar to scope, it would be purview of. So I was corrected in English earlier today on that. My concern about jurisdiction, and this I'll leave to the attorneys to tell me if I'm wrong. There's certain things we have jurisdiction over, like everybody's budget. We actually have the final say on even the Board of Ed budget, not what they spend line item, but we have line item veto on all of the Board of Selectmen's budget line items. So if they're buying too many magazines, we can say, you can't buy that many, and we can cut that line.
You say "we" is the RTM?
Yeah, the RTM.
Got it.
Yeah. But we don't have jurisdiction over certain boards and commissions unless they have a financial aspect, or they're changing policy, or we have to do a change to ordinance. Now, we follow them. We have to vote on one or two of them because state requires us to vote on that. I think one of the ones around 5 Mile River, you may recall, requires the
Five Mile
RTM.
River Commission, yeah.
Yeah, requires, because we have to vote on who's there. But, so that's my concern. Now, jurisdiction does fit what we're actually telling you to do. This is your responsibility. Go out, look at it, investigate, report on it, recommend what you're thinking. But I just don't want the jurisdiction to be interpreted that we have authority over another board of commission that we may not. So I'll ask you, David, what you think, because you've been on the Board of Selectmen also, and what you think of the word.
Where is that word in here?
Yeah.
It's not. We're looking to replace scope with the word
Yeah,
jurisdiction.
so
Yeah.
scope, yeah, like you could say scope
I'm
of
gonna let- yeah, why don't you go and
responsibility
explain
and
it?
authority, scope of, it's the same as purview of,
Right.
like, it has to be There's something that has to follow it. I mean, jurisdiction is,
Seems a little more legal, like.
yeah.
Well, it's a
I
very
mean,
technical term, you
Yeah.
know, right?
Um,
That you have and that you have authority over something.
Right,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like
Right.
subject matter jurisdiction. and
Right.
Like federal
So-
but I think
Scope or responsibility seems.
scope of responsibility,
Yeah.
scope and authority.
I like purview of responsibilities, and
Purview.
I'll tell you the reason why. Like, when F&B reports to the Board of Ed, we don't have purview of what they spend their money on. We
Right.
give them a total appropriation. So typically, while we may make some comments on the thought process of where they're making decisions in their budget, we do not tell them, you can't cut this or you have to add that. That's outside the purview of the F&B committee. And, you know, we'll constantly hear sometimes, because sometimes we do get out of our lane, but it's trying to stay within our lane of F&B and know that when we're sort of like going outside of our purview. I don't
But I would say
make
like,
comments
you don't
on-
have the authority to tell
Right.
them what they can spend their money on, but you certainly have the authority and powers to suggest things to them.
Which we do.
Right? I mean, that, you should be.
Well,
right?
we
Isn't
do.
that your responsibility?
But what we've been doing over the last couple of years, just
Yeah.
as an aside, is we've been talking about process.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the examples, if you're going to introduce Chinese in sixth grade this year,
Mm-hmm.
don't come to the Board of Ed and say it's a $50,000 initiative. Because it's really, tell me what it's going to cost over the next 5 years.
Right.
Because next year you're doing seventh grade, then you're doing eighth grade, then you go into ninth, and are we now doing Chinese 6 or 7 when we get to the final years of high school? So tell me and tell the board what it's going to cost over the next 5 years. And if there's reductions, because there'll be less people taking Spanish, then give me your projections on that. But give a 5-year projected statement of what this is costing, because it's not $50,000. So there's other things along that, like we're asking that certain things not be provided solely at a budget, giving the Board of the Board of Ed 6 weeks to decide on something that they may not have discussed during the course of the year. So those are things that we'll comment on.
Well, don't be
that.
surprised if in version 2, you find purview.
Sure.
No,
Yeah.
what- What I'd like you to
excuse
do
me a
is
second.
you guys
Well,
tell
what-
us what to put in there.
That's right, tell us if it turns out to be purview, then so be it for version 2. But
Is it
this
because-
document used to be matrix, now it's scope, and it wasn't scope unless it was called responsibilities.
And we just don't like the word scope is what's going on here?
No, I still rarely, it's a scope document, but I didn't give a cover page. I just said, you're all responsible for this. And so it took on a life of its
So
own.
this may remain responsibilities, even though in here it's changed. Well, it's open house as to what you feel more comfortable with.
But if, I'll
I guess
ask, but
it's
if
sort
it...
of, this is a question.
Yeah.
Like, I understand that the standing committees don't necessarily have authority, right, to tell town personnel or tell the Board of Ed or whatever, but isn't there some, in a way, like oversight authority
Yes.
over them? Yeah.
And so that jurisdiction may be fine.
Yeah.
I
No,
just
I
need
don't
other
know.
people to tell me that it is. I'll use whatever word.
Okay.
If we're
Figure out a
using
word.
scope, please give us what the scope of you suggesting is the follow-up to it. That's what I was going to ask
Okay.
Beth. You know, because, as I said, the concepts I think we can all agree to.
Yeah.
Just let us know what the word is, and we'll put it in. We're not married to that.
Okay.
All right,
Moving right along.
going through this. Okay, so here's another thing that I actually wrote up at first.
Where are we now, Jack?
I'm going to bring us back to, it's 3 F little I.
Got it.
Okay, so the past one says that the Education Committee is responsible for, let me read it so I don't paraphrase it, for town education facilities and programs, including all related matter to, here's the one that gets you, administration, personnel, and finance. Well, no, they're not for the first two. But they are responsible, and they will be, when we do the budget for those who are new, you'll notice that education is always the primary committee that reports, and F&B reports secondary. That's the only part of the budget night where F&B is not primary, all right? So when my intent was that when we said liaison to the Board of Ed and be responsible for following, monitoring, reporting, and recommending on all related educational matters, as well as other areas aside, that included, from my perspective, the definition that they were still responsible for the financials and the budgets. And in fact, all of the committees, with the exception of this committee, also has financial responsibility to report on the budgets of their departments and the subgroups included in the department, which you're going to hear on budget night. F&B is just looking at the high level. That's our job. It's the committees to get into the weeds and explain things, which frequently, especially when it gets to public works or planning and zoning, Amy can do a better job of explaining zoning laws than I will ever be able to do. And Public Works can get into the detail on what type of pipe we're putting in someplace than I even care to learn. So I know what the cost of it is, and I can explain that part to you. So the question is, do we have to add financial to all these, or do we just take it that financial is incumbent upon all the committees?
You mean we're supposed to be looking over their financial budget?
Well, everybody looks over financial budgets.
Yeah, each of the committees, other than us, looks at the budget of the respective departments, but we don't have this in here.
So yeah, you included in the finance and budget section.
Because we
Right.
have some specific responsibilities when it comes to the town budget. By the way, it also said that we were responsible for taxes in here, which we're not. But, you know, for everything that's financial on this document, either primary or secondary, that committee's responsible for reporting on. Now, whether or not they get into the weeds when they give their report, they are responsible for reviewing. And that's sort of like was embedded. So if there's a better way to put it someplace, that's fine, I'm open to that. But, you know, I don't know how you want to deal with that.
There is a common phrase that appears in each committee. You take a look at it. There are 4 words that are repetitive. They are
Other areas.
following,
No.
monitoring, reporting, and recommending. All recommend that. You'll see those 4 words appear in each one of them. So if we do something, it would be 5 words. It would be financials in there, or something put in at the top, or left assumed the way it is right now. Because it's assumed that we have budget purview,
We have budget responsibility, that's not purview.
like scope.
That's not the scope.
Jurisdiction.
We do. Quite honestly on that,
I'm kidding.
F&B in every committee has, and the full RTM has jurisdiction over that final budget. It is our budget when we're done.
I probably would leave it in, because if you remove it, then there, you know, it just removes the ambiguity if you keep it in.
Okay, so we're going to have to figure out where we're going to put it, but then I want to put it in all the other committees that have finance as well. That's
I
fine.
think so, but I don't know what others
Makes
think.
sense.
I would just, rather than have an issue come up
Because it's
where
not- it doesn't
someone
seem
says
so
it's
clear.
silent on that, therefore there's no,
You need it all consistent.
yeah.
That's why we're meeting, because I looked at it and
So
said.
if you're silent on it in
Yeah.
another place, it can't be assumed, like,
Beth, I said you were right,
think
but
you're
I
better.
just, like,
keep it.
yeah, keep it in, we just have to figure it out. Public Works, I'm just going to mention, they're the only place that reports to the Director of Public Works, and the reason is that, for the most part, there isn't a board or commission, other than when you get into the sewer authority or the parking authority, do they have a board or commission that they go up against as a primary. So they actually do liaise directly with the Director of Public
Parks and
Works.
Rec.
What?
Parks and Rec does.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's Public
Commission.
Works.
Right,
Rather than employees.
okay. But my point is Parks and Rec, deals directly with the Parks and Rec Commission?
Yes.
Well, I see, but it's not,
And they also
Right, department.
direct, they will also deal directly with the
With the
park,
department head.
and with the department head, but Public Works is the only one that actually states liaise with the Director of Public Works, as opposed to liaise with the Director of Park and Rec, because you're dealing with the commission first.
right.
And then
'cause there
the
is no commission,
employees.
yeah.
Okay. Moving right along. Okay, we dealt with that. Beth and I talked about this. There was a meeting in October of '23 in which somebody suggested the word recommend, which we immediately, I said, yes, right, and then we added it in. So Beth was just confirming that that actually got into the document because she hadn't seen the revised document, which was added immediately that day. So,
Well,
and,
but the four words that we have got, following monitoring, reporting, and recommending.
right, and that was
Shows
added
up.
by Rachel, which was another great addition. Okay. Okay, we deleted a couple because we thought they were draconian. And then I'll give you another example of it. So we deleted each officer of a standing committee shall hold office at the will of the committee and may be removed as such officer with or without cause by the committee. Okay, so that sort of takes away any belief that I have in due process. It also takes away that we have committee chairs, there are vice chairs. If there's a disagreement between the two, which has happened on occasion, there's always the capability for minority reports. So the vice chair does take over should a committee go away. So we had one of our education chair was moved to Park and Rec Commission, and I went to the new chair, who was the vice chair then, and said, you know, Tails, you're now it. Tag, you're now it. So, so we thought that that was a little draconian. And so we took it out, being, you serve for a year, you don't like the chair, they'll be out the next year and you can get another chair.
That's section 5, where we see.
Yeah.
deleted. Okay.
The other thing was, which we also thought, and I had a concern about, which is why I forced Frank to remove it, the chair of any standing committee may be removed from such office for failure to discharge properly their duties by the Rules Committee. Now, I'll be nice about it. Like heck, we want the committees to be operating on their own. The Rules Committee is there to set the agenda for the RTM, to assign people to committees, and to monitor what's going on. The power of the RTM is resident in our committees, and that's where it belongs. And so we don't need one party or another taking control of rules, and because they don't like that a chair is attacking elected officers to then remove them. So that was taken out. We have, and I don't believe that would ever happen, but I want to make sure it never does happen. I also believe, as I said, in due process. Okay. One other, proposed changing the moderator. Oh, on section 6, there was a discussion on how the moderator is put together. And if you read the old item, the current moderator is chairing the committee to decide who the next moderator is, which I kind of thought didn't make a whole bunch of sense. So, especially if they want to be the next moderator. Now, it says they're supposed to excuse themselves, but you know what? Leave the committee. We will have the vice chair or somebody elected by the Rules Committee to chair the search for a moderator. And so we did some of the changes to that. The only other change that I had, there was a question, did we ever change other parts of Appendix B? I don't know if we all recall, this was written before that.
Okay.
But later, we did change, Krista found out something that was talking about the notice, and when we all had to give notice for meetings being special and other things like that. And after discussion with Wayne, Wayne said, delete that section. And so we voted in the RTM, I believe, to delete that section. That came from this committee.
Okay.
So the last thing that we have, and I'm sorry to be dumping a lot of stuff on you guys, but I thought it was important that we discuss this prior to either Frank or I adding it into the committee. So, in section 6, where it says, and there's a reason for this, any committee, the third paragraph, any committee may, on its own motion, consider and report to the RTM upon any matter not referred to it, but which is within the scope of such committee. That was because unless rules assigned you to it, you weren't allowed to under the old existing ordinance. But there's something else we wanted to add, and I'm trying to look at see if I can grab the ordinance that I had it on. Well, basically it comes to this. And this comes from Ralph Owen, and it's specific to something. To add a sentence after any committee may on its own motion consider and report to the RTM upon any matter not referred to it, but which is within the scope of such committee. And then add the line, any committee is authorized to establish a subcommittee or working group to conduct studies or analysis within their, I use the word purview, without the consent of the Rules Committee. That's to empower committees to do what they feel is necessary.
Without the Rules Committee making them do it, or...
Or saying you can't.
Right.
You know, each committee is
How could rules
empowered.
stop them?
What?
How could rules stop them from doing it if that's what the committee wants to do?
I don't know, but I think we need to make it clear because the Public Works took back up the sidewalk
Right.
project, and a lot of people were calling foul. Now, having written strategies for the companies I've worked with, at least part of the businesses, you know, it's real nice to write a strategy, but you're not supposed to, when you're done, put it in a closet and not look at it again. You're supposed to take it down periodically, and not that it doesn't do that, but you're supposed to take it down periodically to see, has the strategy changed, has circumstances changed, what did we accomplish, what didn't we accomplish, are there new priorities? And that was one of the things that Public Works was doing as information. And then with some complaints from the Ox Ridge parent, Jay-Z was good enough is going to be re-empowering that sidewalk committee, which was a really good committee, with some different caveats to it that'll make it into a better committee. But people were complaining that they didn't have the right to do that. And so we want to make it perfectly clear that any committee can set up a working group within their purview to go do that. Go ahead, Beth, I see you're
No, I'm
thinking.
just thinking, so sidewalk committee, they have a subcommittee, sidewalk committee. Sidewalk committee, they did have
Working
needs-
group.
Working group, decides, oh, we need sidewalks here, 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 and here.
Right.
And then what? Then they go back to the Public Works Committee, discuss, and vote on whether to recommend that.
Yep. Or there's certain times that I can speak for myself.
Yeah.
So when I took over, one of the things that I knew is that we had a lot of reserve funds that were out there. And I already knew that 7 years after Superstorm Sandy, we had $250,000 sitting out in the Superstorm Sandy fund, which I thought belonged to the taxpayers and not to some fund out there. So I presented to John Zagroski, I will periodically call him JZ, and we talked and set up a group where F&B and the Board of Finance, working with Jen, cleaned up all these reserve accounts. We found about $3 million of funds there, which was substantial. But when we're going through that, we went to the park, one of the Park and Rec funds, to find that people were giving a gift for a new bench for $3,000. The bench costs $2,500, and since it was specific, the $500 was sitting out in that fund. And we couldn't figure out how to get rid of it, because how much maintenance am I doing on that Park and Rec, and I'm not even tracking what's there. So we raised this to Jen and to Kate. And what they did was change the gift policy for the town, which we thought they needed to. So we went to them and said, this needs to be addressed. And so the new gift policy for the town is, and it's written when you're giving a gift, it's in that document, that you give a gift if the amount costs less than the gift, the remaining balance is swept into the general fund. So it keeps things clean. Now, that's also changed on some large gifts, where people now will wait until we know what the cost is, and they'll say, oh, I'll spend up to $20,000. Oh, it's only costing 17. Tell me what it is, I'll pay the 17. But that's a policy that changes based
This is an
upon.
example of the work of a subcommittee, okay?
Well, it could be,
That's
or
where
it
we
could
got-
be a
that's where we came
committee
from.
as that. I just want to give examples of how things have happened. And, you know, we did a subcommittee that actually changed how we fund fire engines in this town, where we did the work, we gave it to the Director of Finance, Town Administrator, we presented it to, at that time, Jamie, and instead of building up a reserve every year for what fire engines were going to cost, where we would have had about $30 million in cash sitting out in a fund, we now bond them, because we don't have to pay it for 3 years. And if we want to pay cash after 3 years, we just write another resolution and we pay it off at that time. So those are policies and other things where subcommittees and work that was done in a committee has changed policy in the town. And we want to encourage that for all committees.
I think that while we're nearing the end of this, one thing that Jack did want to mention, but we've skipped over it, you'll find it in section 3E. We're preserving the right of the committee chairman to have access to town council.
Yes.
Okay, and again, there are things that are embedded in here that are good steps forward to sort of lock that down. It does say that, not everybody on the committee has it, but the representative, the chair of the committee is responsible, can have access. Other people can have access with keeping the moderator informed.
With the approval of the moderator. So that was to maintain that we're not bugging town council or P&Z council or other councils that we pay money to on minor issues. If you have an issue, the chair can bring it up, or with approval of the moderator, you can go there. But all chairs need to have access to their respective council in order to do their job. So,
All right, we are near the end?
Well, no, now it's for any comments or questions
No,
people
we're
have.
near the end of the,
Yeah.
of the guest's commentary.
I'm sorry
Which
to
we
go through
appreciate.
this, but this may have answered some of the questions that were there. And actually, you know, Beth did a great job in doing this. We had already cleared some things with David. I had already done some things with Jim Cameron, and I'm working with Ralph on some comments that they had. So,
All right. I want to go around the table. Table is open for suggestions of things that should be addressed in this, or that you may see that were addressed sort of in a clumsy way that can be wordsmith. The two levels of critique. One is the philosophical level, which Jack was just talking about, and then the other level is wordsmithing that we all can help out with. My suggestion is that that if it doesn't come up tonight, in the next few days, forward a memo to us so that they may be folded into version 2, if need be, as appropriate, because version 2 should be available to our colleagues in the various committees, because this is affecting how the standing committees work. It's only right, it's appropriate that we send this to them. But I'd like to send them a current version, which will be version 2.
no, it will not. It will not. This will not be
given.
given, I'm sorry, Frank, but this will not be given to any committee until this committee approves
No,
it. We're not having multiple copies running around.
No.
This is your committee, you guys approve it, and then we'll go from there. Then they can get it. I know that that slows down what people want to have quickly this is done, but it's the only way to ensure that when we're giving out a copy, then when they come back with feedback, we'll bring it back to this committee, and the final document will be approved again by this committee, which will bring it to the RTM.
So it's incumbent on us to move promptly to get comments in so that they can be baked in to the next word processing. Because what we don't really want to do is to go change this sentence tonight and go another sentence before. We want to have a sweep to collect up the different comments that Jack has referred to that are not on this piece of paper, but they should be the next time around.
And I'm also proposing to Frank, only because I have a slew of meetings over the next couple of days, that if it's available, that there be another special meeting that will take everybody's comments, and if we're in a position that everybody is satisfied, you can either vote on it, discuss it, and that.
And that
Wait, wait,
quite well might be a Zoom meeting. We'll see with that. It would be another special meeting.
But
called sometime over that.
I'll tell you what it is. Only because this is my schedule, guys. Is Thursday, February 13th, which is before the school vacation and before the RTM meeting. But I apologize, but I have budget meetings, my own meeting, rules meeting, lining up on every day of the week with the exception of that before the vacation.
So you're just asking, is that a good date to meet?
Yeah, and
It's
then,
fine with me.
Again, our goal is to identify any of the two levels of comments, the nitpicking, which we want to do,
Okay.
or someone else finds them, and then the conceptual, to get it in so it's baked in, and hopefully we may call the special meeting for that night, and again, it might be Zoom, to ratify or endorse the document so that it can go forward to a wider audience at that time.
or if we need another meeting, we'll meet in March and do it then. You know, I don't want people to feel forced that you're not happy with something and you're voting, because ultimately you guys are the ones who are presenting this to the RTM, and you gotta know that you're satisfied and there's not a lot of loose ends. So if you need more time to think about something, I'll get whatever verbiage I presented here tonight to Frank to distribute. And then, but I keep on stressing, time. I know Frank wants this off his plate, because you have other things to do.
No,
I would
we're
just say
good.
substantively, one thing that I understand you guys, that you felt it was draconian. But I think that, people are committee chairs for 1-year terms.
Yes.
Right? So, and you're elected by your committee. So
Right.
like you kind of serve at the favor, at the will of your committee. So in the event that something happened, that a person, if the committee votes to remove someone, like, or wants someone removed, there's probably a good reason, and I feel like they should have that power.
Yeah, I agree with that. That was-
Just as you are elected by those people, if you,
I have no
That's the one thing
problem.
that caught my eye. I totally agree with that. I think committee chairs serve at the pleasure of their committee. And
Yeah.
if the committee loses confidence in them,
For whatever.
they should lose the position.
that's.
So-
Not leaving the committee,
He has a nice,
Right.
they're no longer the chair.
Yeah,
I mean, I've served on too many committees, and if you lose the confidence of your committee, what's the point of being chairman? Nobody's going to listen to you anyway.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, and I
So-
kind of think, it's probably never happened, and, it probably won't happen, but it was in there, originally for a reason.
So can I take out 2 words?
Sure, which one?
So each officer of a standing committee shall hold office at the will of the committee and may be removed as such officer with cause by the committee. I don't like the without cause.
Yeah, without cause makes no sense, does it?
Yeah, with cause. So if you're not doing your job, you're not doing this, you're argumentative, you're being, whatever it is, to me, that's all cause. So as long as we keep cause in there, I'm okay. I just don't like it being a
I
will.
mean, why not just say by a majority vote of the committee and leave it to the committee?
Because it gets a little confusing because cause, a lot of times when people start thinking about for cause,
Yeah.
cause can be a very technical term defined, like
Yes.
if you're forced out of a board or something like that, cause is delineated very specifically, so it's almost like for any reason, right?
Right.
If it's, I don't know.
And you're
I think
creating
cause gets
a
little-
due process issue. If the committee chair disagrees that there was no cause, then,
Then
what, do they
everyone's
take it to
arguing over-
rules? Do they take it to town council, the ethics committee?
Yeah, what
Which
constitutes
is not within their scope either, but
Right.
I've been serving on that board, and we've seen all sorts of crazy complaints come in.
So we should just say then, and may be removed as such officer
By vote.
by,
By a
By
majority vote of
majority
the
vote.
committee.
Majority vote,
Yeah, I don't think, it's unlikely to ever come up, but I just feel that it should
done.
be in there.
That's how simple this is.
Okay.
Done.
Yeah, thanks.
But that's why we're all here meeting, to say, what are you looking at, what do you think? Let's get the wording right. That'll be in version 2.
So you're putting it back in, it's not going to be totally deleted, it's just going to be changed.
It's going to be changed.
So the next one is also deleted, but we're not changing that, what was that?
No.
Chair of any.
It just
I
says the
would
rules
prefer
committee
not.
can do it.
Yeah, I don't want the rules committee
Right.
to do that.
Aha, got it,
Yeah, rules should have no say over who's the committee chairs are.
agreed.
Yeah. I don't
Rules again
disagree
serves
with
at the
that.
pleasure of the RTM. I mean, we kind of forget that. We look at them as the RTM's overlord, but they really serve us. We don't serve them.
You mean we're not?
Yeah. So, sometimes people need to remind them of that.
I know.
So
I think I just
You have
did.
term
spoken
limits.
as a full reflection.
So is rules not the standing committee? Is that why it's not listed on this?
I know, I noticed that.
Yeah.
It's not a standing committee?
No.
Correct.
I kind of look at rules as being the Ways and Means Committee of what goes to Congress. It pretty much says, this is ready for you to vote on, so let's assign the committees and have them get ready. And if they're smart and they know what's coming down the road, hey, I know this is coming down the road, let's get committees looking at this up front. It assigns people to committees based upon the recommendations of what they get, and there has to be some decisions that are sometimes made that are tough ones.
So
And-
how is it not a standing committee?
It sets a function, one of the functions is to set the agenda for the RTM. Now, on RTM, the agenda can be changed as
if any legislative body can.
I don't
do
know
it.
how to answer what you were answering, questioning
But,
on why is it not a standing committee?
Yeah.
I think that would be,
I think part of it is because the rules members all serve on other standing committees.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
that
So
would go
it's-
back to the, what you were talking about like having more than one committee.
Right.
yeah, no, but that opens up membership to say, I want to be on Park and Rec and F&B. And that starts to get to be,
Got it. As long as it's not defined as a standing committee, I guess.
No,
Okay.
it's not in section 2, so.
And what's the differentiation between a subcommittee and the committee itself? Because like what you described is kind of like, sounds like the committee doing its job, not, like, I don't know, like, what's the benefit? Are you taking a subset of the committee itself and saying?
yeah, maybe I should
This,
use,
this like subset of people can actually make a decision without the, you know,
The rest of the
the
committee.
rest of the committee? Is that the benefit?
they can set up, and I don't know if subcommittee, it's really a subcommittee of the committee, can do some work, and then they can bring back a recommendation back to the full committee.
But that still sounds like, you know, it sounds like three of us looking, or, you know, what happened here? You guys looked over everything, or, you know, with your input, now you're bringing it back to the committee. Does it have to be defined, I guess? Like,
Or so formal.
yeah, what is it, what's the
Sometimes-
benefit of defining that?
Sometimes I don't mind taking out subcommittee and just saying a working group,
Yeah,
but I think that this is in there to empower some of the RTM committees so they don't have people snipping at their heels when they are doing something like studying sidewalks or other things like that.
Well, and like F&B sets up subcommittees during the budget process. You have an education group and you have a Board of Selectmen group, right? Or at
Well,
least
we
you used
actually
to.
even divide it more, and then we meet up with the committees to form another group there, and we meet that with the Board of Finance so that we have people working, and it got the nickname the buddy system, but it was basically that the committee, the F&B, and the Board of Finance would discuss what's in a particular area of the budget. So everybody knew what everybody was thinking before the Board of Finance
but did
voted.
that draw criticism? Because like there were people focusing on certain areas?
No. No, that was set up to resolve criticism of what had happened previously, and I can tell you offline on
Yeah,
that.
okay.
So the only other structural thing I have based on the discussion tonight is on part 4, section 6, second to last page. That was the provision that Jack suggested that any committee can set up a working subcommittee to review and report on topics within the committee's jurisdiction. If you go to the prior provision there, that starts any committee on its own motion may consider and report to the RTM on any matter within its subgroup, then any questions or disputes concerning the scope of any standing committee shall be decided by rules. That means rules can shut down the work of the subcommittee. I mean, why not have?
I
if a
actually
committee
wanted
is
to
gonna
take
go
that
off-
out.
If the committee's gonna go, quote unquote, off the reservation or do something on its own, and rules disagrees, why should rules be able to shut them down? Rules may be able to say, we don't want you to present it, but they still should be able to come to the full RTM and say, look, this is what we wanted to present. Rules said no, they wouldn't put us on the agenda. What do you want us to do, RTM? Do you want to hear this report or not? I think the rules decision should be subject to full RTM review.
So, David, in my working copy, on that one that I added that they can set up working groups, I'll take out subcommittees, I'll just say working groups. I was questioning whether or not that last line in that shouldn't be deleted.
Yeah, or just, it should be subject to being overruled by a full,
Yeah, I
full
don't,
vote of them.
we'll just make it easy
Okay.
and just say, rules doesn't
Yeah.
have,
If a committee goes to the work of creating a report that they want to bring to the RTM's attention, they should have the right to do it.
yeah, I agree.
Right,
I agree.
okay.
So I'll take that out.
So when you take this out, we don't have to vote on it now, right?
No.
So when we will vote on something eventually?
Yes.
We will see the results within a matter of days, and that tentative date, which was February 13th, hold that date, because that would give us an opportunity to review what we've discussed this evening and the little changes that have been suggested.
And
Second to
vote
last page.
Sure.
at that time?
If you're ready
Yeah,
to,
and what we would be voting on is that we find this draft acceptable and ready to be distributed to the rest of our colleagues and the other committees.
But we're not voting on each
But so
little
what,
thing.
as a result of our prior experience a little while ago, we probably jumped the gun in seeing all the different committees and having a lot of different versions. So the focus of what we've been talking about is to get our version 2 together. We could vote that we found it acceptable and then release it. And then,
then we'll do a
other
dog
people-
and pony show again,
the
probably.
other committees may quite well come up with a suggestion that we didn't think about, and that's what the collaboration is. But we want to start the collaboration with a single point.
Got it.
So this is back to the first page.
Yeah,
No,
Let's go.
but the original
yeah,
Appendix B states that no person shall serve on more than one standing committee. And you said, we know that, that's how it's been, that's how it operates, so we don't need to have that worded, language in there. So you removed it in your proposed code. I just think that by removing it, you create ambiguity, right? So the minute you remove it, you're going to have someone who says, I want to be on 2 committees, and why can't I? It doesn't say anything about that in the Appendix B. And it used to say that no one could. Now it said, it's silent
No,
on
it
that.
doesn't say that nobody could. It says that you can.
Yeah, so
Oh,
you're
it
saying
says
it should
can?
say the opposite.
Yeah.
That's okay.
It
Wait a
says
minute.
member may not be on more than 2,
Oh, more than 2.
so therefore you can be on 2.
You can be on
Right.
2, okay. I'm
So
sorry.
we're eliminating that, so it says you can be on 1.
Okay, that's clear. I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
No,
I
that's
get it
fine.
now, okay. All right, so no one serves on 2. No.
just as an interruption, Linda, welcome.
So I'm
Be-
very sorry.
Your college on TGS&A, I'm so glad you could get over here
But I
tonight.
read the material earlier and
We're glad you're here.
Do you think it should state?
No,
that
I
you
think
have
it's,
one?
no, I was misreading it. So basically, you're saying a member may only be on 1 committee,
Right.
Right. Standing committee.
standing committee. Yep, that's fine. No, I retract my,
No, this is why we want to talk things out, so that any questions,
no.
Well, I think the most helpful thing would be to see a new version with all the proposed verbiage in here for us to look at more carefully and then, come into another meeting and vote on it, or make further revisions if necessary.
so here's what I can commit to, all right? I will put in the things that we agreed to tonight in the next version, and name that version 2. I don't do dates.
How about adding page numbers?
Yeah,
Yeah, that would help.
We'll do that.
you have, well, I have to admit, I am not an expert in this, so that with doing 2 columns, when I got here, the next column starts over here, so I'm matching and typing things up and spacing things going down. So page numbers were not my primary
Okay,
goal.
got it.
You could do a compare doc and do like a red line.
Right.
Yeah. That's not my expertise at this stage. You want to talk about Excel spreadsheets, I can handle that. So I'll get out what we agreed to today, and if there's other things that I got wrong, just let us know. I will put down certain other areas that we discussed that still has to be looked at. So like, come up with what words you want to come up with, purview, jurisdiction. I don't really care. I'm not wed to any of it, all right? And then, if the group does it, we can hold a meeting based upon FOIA over the internet, but we can put down, if we see that, 5 people like this, then Frank can say, okay, we got 5 people out of the 10 that like this, you know, and so we're going to do that. And then we'll do the next version, or the version as modified on the day on the 13th, if everybody's ready to vote.
So we should send back any comments to Frank
Yeah.
Yes.
individually, don't send a group text or email.
And we, as we noted when we went over this once before, these are work papers, and they're not necessarily to be attached to the minutes. The minutes show that we've had these discussions, which is appropriate, but this is a working session, and they're work papers, like attorney.
And they're not to be distributed at this time.
Yeah, and that's the point. We would love to get it right before we get to that.
And maybe
This business of scope and,
Because it's then a full meeting, but it's not public. So,
we're not in executive session, but we're dealing with work
right.
papers.
So full emails to the full group constitute, a communication
Is that
of
covered
the
anywhere in here?
committee.
That would be a good thing to
FOIA.
read.
Yes,
That's
it's
FOIA.
FOIA.
That's
How do we
state law.
spell FOIA? That's a good point.
Yeah.
I'd love to get that business about purview and scope off the table, or so that's included, baked into, I'd love to get it baked in and settled. The sense of the meeting, I'm going to ask you a couple quick questions. Who would be accepting the word scope the way it is there right now? All right, who would like to see it changed to purview?
But
Okay, I
can-
think that
can
does
you
it
ask-
now.
But like
Okay,
I
How-
said, purview.
Tell me
How would-
what
how-
the,
who-
can you
again,
provide what the
excuse me a second.
purview of
Excuse me a
is?
second. Who would like it to be responsibility? What was the other one?
You have a
Jurisdiction.
majority.
I think
at
it would be
purview.
like, you would say, scope of responsibility and authority, purview, within the purview of your responsibilities.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, scope and purview can't just hang out there alone.
Right, so, no, I fully agree. Can you send what
I
you're...
can send you like a couple
Send it to Frank.
suggestions, and
right.
you
So
guys can
there-
pick
I
or
can't see
something.
any
Global-
of these being determinative of any
Yes.
issue in the future, so I'm agnostic. Jurisdiction, I'm a little queasy at, but any of these
Yeah.
other words are,
Yeah.
But Jack, I think
6 and
the
1/2
changes
dozen.
that we make should always keep the original so that we can
Yes.
see what changes were
Yes.
made, and eventually when we vote, we're voting on what it was and what it's gonna be, you know?
I can do that.
No, there's a certain way we're doing it. So what you may find is that this is now going landscape, because you're going to have existing code, proposed code, revised proposed code. So so that they line up, because it's very important that these line up. So I'm going to have to figure out how to do that.
May I suggest that the changes as you enter, put your bold key on? Or your,
Yeah, I don't
and
think
so
we need a
just
third
for us,
version of this.
Just for us, so that
Okay, I
when we
can do
see
that.
version 2, we can see some of the bolded text. And then when we go forward from that,
Well, I'll make it color, but,
But we should always have the original still, because we don't know what part you're changing now as opposed to what was there before, you know. We should always have the original and then vote on the new thing.
Yeah, I don't think the current proposal is that important. If, what we need is the new proposed code and the old proposed code.
okay,
The
so
third
wait,
column is
I just want to
not
make sure I'm
necessary.
hearing the
It's
same
confusing.
thing.
Go ahead.
Okay. So in the old days of clarify, verify, sorry, the existing code was always going to stay here. So if we're changing something, do you want the proposed code to stay the same?
As what?
So like if we change something,
could
To,
I suggest that when you sit down one evening and go ahead and bake in the things we've been talking about, just make them bold, so we can see when we get together what you did, and it'll be a little bit
Proposed
easier.
code.
Okay, but on the same.
But not a third column.
Right,
nothing.
okay,
Well,
fine.
you don't have to show the iteration.
Right, I just
Yeah.
wanted to know what you wanted. It's easy enough for me to make copies and all things
Yeah,
like
I
that.
think we made a mistake here on the front part, there was some bold stuff there, but,
No, I put that in
well, yeah,
specifically.
but there's nothing else bold.
No, I did that because that was a change from another document.
But that's
that
what
people
made me
should
think
know.
of it. Okay,
Okay, you guys.
shall we have a round of thanks to our colleague, Jack, who's
I don't need it. Get the
Thank you.
damn thing.
Thanks, Jack.
Get the damn thing done,
Thanks for your time.
so I can go
Right,
back
thank
and
you,
do
And
other
Jack,
things.
you're welcome to join the discussion. As the night grows on, we're at 9:15.
Yeah, I
I think
know.
that we have maybe a half an hour to discuss the committees and the caucuses.
I tend to believe that I attend enough
And you're welcome
meetings.
to stay, Jack.
Thank you.
Would you like the old textbook?
No. Unless it's on.
It's good at boat anchor. All right, let's take a deep breath, and we'll move on to the next topic.
There's another topic?
Yes.
What is it? I forget. Where is it?
We've been asked by rules to discuss and prepare recommendations for revision of the paragraphs that describe the way district does its caucuses. And around the table here, who participated in a district caucus in the last 2 months? Have you?
I was voted in with the
There
code.
you go. So that, you know how the thing works. There were, with the 6th district, I think 5 of them had additions to bring in. And there were 5 different sort of headaches. The headaches went to town council, to town clerk and a moderator. And the sentiment of our moderator is, maybe the text that's in there now does it, but we can do a better job and codify some of the standards or expectations of how district caucus work, and replace this section. So in your package, you have Appendix B, Part 8, Sections 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's the way it is right now. Most of the changes would be in Section 4, including Section 1, 2, 3 for no one felt left out. What they're talking about really is making changes down below. All right, we have that for reference. And the next page represents suggestions that have come in, which we can discuss. We could actually, you'll have to vote, let me indicate yea or nay on some of these, whether they would be worthwhile to pursue or not. But I received feedback from 5 of the 6 district chairs. For the one missing district chair, I got information from other members of the caucus, and there are, so we might as well say that the suggestions came in from all 6. And there are 11 down here. I've added a 12th, which I can tell you about. We could go silent here and read them all, or we could take them one at a time and have some commentary as to whether these topics are worthy or not. What would happen is, going back to rules after our discussion, this is the last page of our agenda handout. What I foresee is, at the end of our discussion, writing a follow-up memo to the rules saying this is what the TGS&A considered and recommends. We're not voting on it, but it needs to be discussed further. All right, number 1, comply with FOIA and Robert's Rules of Order. Just to make it clear that a district caucus will comply with
Okay.
Oh, I see, the very
Yeah.
last page, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And Beth, I realized that because of email follow-ups,
Yeah, yeah.
you only got this afternoon.
Yeah.
However, we're going through it on an informal basis to see what people think. So one appears to be pro forma, but need to be stated that, just as we stated over the other parts of appendix B. Number two, agenda or minutes are not required to be submitted to the RTM or town clerk. And that has been a tradition, that a caucus is not a official format, and a product of, that's what the word appendage. It's not an informal appendage of the RTM. Therefore, agendas and minutes have not been filed with higher authorities. So that's the way it has been, but it.
Is that true when there are caucuses to discuss town issues versus just appointing new members to a district?
Read the fine print, Mr. Bain.
Which
I've got you
section?
here. As long, provided the
Right.
caucus is not acting on town policy,
Okay.
budget, or matters other than electing a member to replace a vacancy.
Okay.
Gotcha? Channel 79 is not necessarily invited to these meetings, so we said audio and visual recording is not permitted. Somebody would come up with a brilliant idea that we should invite 79. No. These are personnel matters. Number 4 echoes back to somewhat to the existing language. Within 10 days after notification of a vacancy by clerk, district chair should notify the remaining members of the district of that. That's stated in the existing legislation, although maybe a little fairly clumsily, and maybe this says it a little bit more clearly. Number 5, district chair shall seek nomination from the public. That's a new phrase. And remaining members for filling the vacancy. And that the chair shall advise the members of the caucus that there will be a meeting. Later on, somewhere else in here, it says that the person's credentials. Did you have to write up a CV or a little
Yeah, I
summary?
mean, an email summary.
So, in some cases, the district chair hasn't circulated that to the members of the caucus until right there at the meeting. So it would say, let's get that out. Let's get that information out to the members, arbitrarily 48 hours ahead of time.
Well, when you run an open election, I didn't submit a resume, my name was just on the ballot.
Yes.
So
I'm
why is a
wondering what-
resume required? I'm.
Yeah,
like,
you know,
just-
what's the parallel from
Why,
being on the
why,
ballot
like,
to being
I don't know, my
in-
district just, we
Yeah.
had a caucus and voted in two people for vacancies. And they did submit resumes and we did have access to them to read them, but even at that time, I thought that was not, surely, like, if you want to be on the RTM and make it easy, you submit a resume, but like, do they have to? I mean, what if you, I don't know.
If you, let me
maybe-
deconstruct what you just said. If you want to serve on the RTM, maybe or maybe not, maybe that, but that's not what we're discussing. We're discussing filling a vacancy within a district.
Right.
And perhaps the district chairman who suggested this is a compendium, this is a different, sort of
Suggestions,
organized
yes.
in some way.
Yeah,
Wants to have the members of the district
yes,
aware of the credentials of the person who's applying, rather than have it just a shock and awe of the person shows up that evening.
no.
It's biography of,
I understand what it is. I mean, I'm just,
Okay,
like, I didn't necessarily know it was required.
These
Right,
are
by writing it
suggestions.
in, or
It's
we
not
make it a
required.
requirement.
Yeah.
It's not required, but what these are suggestions that may be embodied in the code.
Okay.
To give guidance to the district chairs
Okay.
and the people, how to conduct themselves in the future.
Okay.
You also have 48 hours for 5 and 6. I mean, you should probably have 5 be a longer period than 6.
Yeah, 5 and 6, go ahead. What was your suggestion?
5 should not align to 6. 6 should be a shorter time period than 5, right? You can't advise everybody that you're going to hold this caucus and then expect all the resumes to be available at the same time you're advising them. You have to give them all an opportunity to go find other candidates or, get candidates to send in their information. So like you either make it 48 hours and 24 hours, you could do 5 days in 2 days, that kind of thing. If you have them aligned, it seems a little extreme.
I think I understand that.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, you set a date in the future, say it's 5 days, could be like weeks, and then, whether it's 24 hours or 48 hours.
Right. 5 is intended to avoid a snap caucus, like tomorrow night, we're gonna meet. So, but 5's intention is to let people know so that they can get a babysitter.
Yeah, of course.
6 is, once it's called, let's get the information to the people. So I think your suggestion is good. Numbers, I don't know. 2 days, excuse me. 4 days?
Yeah, 4 days.
4 days and then 2 days.
Yeah.
Other nominations from the floor.
I would think most of the candidates are coming from, references within the district. So that gives the people in the district a heads up, hey, this is what what the sequencing is or what the timeline is to get bios or resumes, whatever you decide to call it.
And at times, if you look at the addresses of people in the RTM, the many next door neighbors,
Yeah.
no, it's the way it works.
Is there any, when we say public, like, do you know what that is intended to mean in number 5? Shall seek nominations from the public? Does that mean like a public posting or announcement? Or just
General population.
like casually talking to your
The
neighbors?
word public got jammed in here so that, in response to keeping us from being a club, where it's only members of the caucus could throw new blood, new material. So maybe we could phrase this more gracefully.
Okay.
From what would it be, like solicitation or invitation?
I'd say from the community. I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to think about it, or,
It was published in the Darien
It was in the
newspaper
paper, wasn't it?
For certain districts, not all the districts, because
No,
some didn't have openings,
Yeah.
but the ones that had several openings, they said they have a caucus scheduled in this date, and I mean.
They did that on their own initiative,
Yeah.
but not as a requirement. So we could set that up as a requirement, that they must buy space in the paper.
I
I don't think so. All right, let's think then about a substitution for the words "from the public."
Well, you really only want residents, don't you?
Well, it should be-
So it could be public notice to residents, which is very specific, just,
like from your
I mean, specific
district.
just to every single person who lives in
That's what you
Darien.
said.
You
Right,
don't-
but are we now
I mean, we don't
imposing
need
a
to
publication?
notify anyone in New Canaan.
Are we imposing a publication requirement on district chairs?
See,
Hopefully
that's,
not.
I don't
No.
think we
There's
should.
no
That's why
budget for
I,
that, right?
Right.
No,
Yeah.
that's going overboard.
so that's why I was wondering about from the public.
Well, then, all
What does
right,
that
what
mean?
maybe we could solve the impasse by striking out "from the public." Shall seek nominations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that,
Just asking for trouble.
yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of this is not really necessary for the ordinance, but
Oh my
Yes,
gosh,
yes.
listen, this is why this is listed, this format, because
Right.
when it comes time to put this into an ordinance, we're gonna have to do a lot of work.
yeah.
These are concepts. 7. Yeah. Provided the content are available for consideration, the meeting of the Met Caucus shall be held no less than 10 days prior. This is holdover language. No less than 10 days prior to the next meeting of the RTM, otherwise the meeting shall be held prior to the next RTM meeting. I'm not really sure what the genius was in this older letter. It was, I'm speculating that the people who wrote this many years ago were afraid that you'd have a meeting one night and the RTM meeting the next night, and all of a sudden a whole bunch of people have been added.
I mean, I've been on the RTM since 2003, except for my years in the Board of Selectmen, and we traditionally would hold our caucuses to appoint new members the night of the RTM meeting.
Yeah.
They
Because
would
that's
come, we
when
would all show up a
everybody can
half
get
hour
there, yeah.
before and meet the people, and it's like, yeah,
Yes.
you're in, join us.
Yes.
And that makes, it's much easier on the members too, instead of making people go out a separate night, you know, for a 20-minute meeting.
I mean, you're technically not in until you're sworn in, right? So
Right,
it
and
doesn't
you're,
really-
and if you're there at the meeting, the town clerk is there, she can swear you right in.
that's how I
Oh,
was elected in.
All right, again, we can be voting, or we can have a sense of the meeting, that we could just strike this.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah.
That's an artifact of another generation that felt it would be in there, and we don't really see the need for it to be there. I'm happy, throw it out.
So, I'm sorry to ask another dumb question, but this last page, this is because we're supposed to be writing an ordinance on this? Who wants an ordinance on filling big
Okay.
RTM
We already have
vacancies?
All right, my discussion,
Yes.
79 is listening.
Yes.
My discussion with the moderator
Okay,
was, we don't have to do this. Things have been going along. The existing description moves things along, and
Yes.
people know how to do these meetings.
yes,
I was wrong. What he had been subject to, as well as town council and town clerk, is a cloud of questions about how things should be conducted.
okay,
So what our moderator has suggested is that we embody the rules, rubrics, the procedures in the town code, in the appendix there, to answer future questions and make the machine operate more smoothly in the future. And he said, he said, well, you just add all this at the bottom. Well, in fact, when we look at it, we may remove part of this text and put in text that we find suitable. What the process here is, the process is not well defined. We're making it up as we go along. The process is for us to discuss, and TGS&A was charged, you go back and look at the tape, to look into this.
okay, yeah.
And so the way we were looking into it, we elicited views from the
Oh,
district chairs who had to go through this little bubble.
okay. When
And
did
so
we
that
solicit?
by the time this comes around next year, we will have something good. These concepts will eventually have to be embodied into the text of
Okay, when did we solicit these?
as soon as rules asked me to. Like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, so you sent out something?
I sent a note to the district chairs
District,
saying,
okay.
rules is asked, as rules at TGS&A. GS&A will be discussing it in a future
Okay.
meeting. Please give me your
So
observations.
these are their
Oh, okay.
observations? Okay.
Absolutely, they are.
This absentee ballot one is pretty spicy.
Well, there's the spicy one coming up here. So with your permission, I'm going to make 7 go away.
Yeah, please.
All right, good. Here's a question about a quorum. Now, we know what a quorum is. It's a half plus 1. A small group as a district, is it satisfactory just to make it a half? Well, okay, define it as half here. And we'll be grappling with the people who are absent. You have an in-person meeting, but somebody wants to do a hybrid meeting and come in by video or phone. Are they counted in the quorum or not? Round and round. One of the districts had a problem with, did I get this right? Had a problem with people wanting to become part of the quorum by remotely, or if not remotely, then by submitting their proxies. They submitted a proxy, are you part of the quorum? All tangled up. And so, well, here's an opportunity to untangle it and say, this is the way we want to do it. So this is a suggestion. Quorum defined at half the meeting membership. Attending, and you don't see the words attending in person is required for the conduct of the meeting. If you have caucus, come to the caucus, make decisions in person. Doesn't have to be that way. On the other hand, we can say it should be that way, and then that's our house, like house rules. So we can say that's a house rule, that you have to be in person at the caucus. What do you think?
To vote, I think that's,
There are some meetings that are just remote. Sometimes the chairman calls them as remote meetings. So that doesn't fit right into this though, right?
How about, let's do a little wordsmithing right here. Quorum, half a meeting. Maybe number 8, without number 7, whatever, this item.
Yeah, I mean, 8 and 9 are kind of related, and I'm just thinking like, okay, your district needs to vote somebody in, and there's certain people that have a certain individual that they want to, get in, but those certain people can't make it physically, and there's no way to have a remote meeting, so they just want to like lob into the district chair, here's my guy, and here's my vote. But I guess the counter argument to that is, to be fair to all the other people running, those people need to also have certified that they've reviewed all the other candidates running.
Well,
So, I
it's
mean,
still
that's-
not fair because you're not there to hear the discussion,
It's true too.
I mean, I've been in so many meetings where I've gone in thinking I'm voting one way and then I hear what's everyone saying, it's like, oh, I'm not voting that way anymore. So,
Okay, so that's a
Yeah.
good point.
I mean, that's the difference between a proxy and just listening to the whole thing
Right.
on remote. That's different.
Participating.
Yeah.
Those are two different
Zoom.
things.
Right.
So then proxy could be the one you strike, and then you allow people to call in or be physical, I mean.
Right.
That's,
The only thing that does is make people just not want to come to the meeting and like, oh,
Yeah.
if there's an option, I'd rather stay home.
right.
well, I'm out of town on business and I
Mhm.
want you guys
I
to
know.
have a quorum, so
Yeah.
I'll call you.
Mhm.
Again, that's why a lot of these caucuses are done the night of an
Exactly.
RTM meeting.
Yeah, right.
Because
Right.
everyone's there
or why
anyway.
they were so delayed, because there's some that took like weeks, if not months, to
To
get done.
get.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, in the interest of facilitating getting one done, I mean,
Yes.
maybe there's some compromise of allowing people to like call in to cast their vote and listen to the discussion, but it's not ideal, obviously.
Can there be a hybrid solution where, because if you're worried about someone abusing the privilege of phoning it in, they may never come to a meeting in person if you just allow that.
Mhm.
And you don't want that. You
Yeah.
don't want to, so maybe there needs to be, in order to remain a member of the committee, you have to attend a certain number of meetings, and whatever that number is. I just know some organizations that do this because of COVID and Zoom. They've gotten into some bad habits. And some people have decided that they never need to attend in person in a meeting, and that's not good.
Right.
But you can meet it halfway and allow a certain number. You just have, there's a requirement that you have to attend so many meetings. Whatever percentage of meetings are held, you need to be there in person. But so that you still are able to conduct business. Sometimes and there's an emergency need for a meeting, and you want people, everyone to be able to participate in Zoom. It's just
Wasn't there a provision in the town ordinance years ago that said you could not participate by telephone? Remember there was a Board of Finance member who went to Florida for
Probably.
half the year?
Yeah.
Right.
And they were
It's
just
the
phoning it in,
snowbird thing,
and
yeah.
so
Yeah.
But then,
would that get taken out?
then COVID happened.
Yeah.
Right.
COVID
And
changed
then the
everything.
state has issued, I don't have it with me,
Yeah.
guidelines for
Right. But do we still have
Virtual
that
meetings.
provision in the town ordinance?
No.
Anywhere? Okay.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, I haven't looked for it, but
Yeah,
I
that's the other
remember.
question, is are we setting a precedent for other, like, voting issues?
Well, I think it became,
But-
the governor
but-
issued an
but
edict.
again, this
There
is a
was there
family-
was,
this is a
because of
family
COVID, there was
matter.
an emergency
This is just the way
ruling
we want to
that
govern our-
public corporations
Right.
had to, in fact, were required to be able
Right.
to allow people to participate.
Right.
But anyway,
It's-
somewhere in between, I think, is the answer.
This is simply for a caucus to fill a vacancy.
Yes,
In a district.
yes.
And this will be a part of Appendix B. This is
Yes.
not going to be an ordinance,
Yes.
it's part of
If we
Appendix.
say, item number 12 here is, people will wear blue socks, using that as an illustration, then that's just a rule for the RTM's districts when they're conducting a caucus to fill a vacancy.
So you won't
And they have
worry
to wear blue
about
socks at that
consistency across,
It
just.
has no
just
implication
looking at
to
this
commissions or,
specifically.
any of the other, anything else. So that's what, it kind of makes it easy for us, because if we can say, it's an in-house thing, we can say what we want to do. Now, if we add, coming out of the meeting tonight, which I hope will end quickly, blue socks are on here, then we'll go back up to rules, and then rules will bang it around among the districts, and it'll come back to us, and we'll cut a deal and make it a resolution. And a resolution then goes on the floor of the RTM to be voted on. And it can be amended, it's a whole lot of things.
if we're
So this is to get the ball rolling.
If we're amending Appendix B,
Yeah.
and this is going to be part of Appendix B,
Yes.
why wouldn't it be part of that whole process?
Because Appendix B has several sections, and the item that Jack and I have been working on has been Section 6 of Appendix B. This is Section
Eight.
Okay,
4.
okay,
Section,
But
part 8,
It's a
section
piece-
4.
it's a piecemeal thing.
okay.
They want something that each chairman can live by.
Yes. That's what Seth wants.
It's more like an
Seth wants,
FAQ than
Seth
part of the
wants to
ordinance.
We
kind
have
of get
to-
the thing straightened out, and next year not have a big hassle.
I think we just put it in here, what's absolutely required. That's it.
I mean, 8 and 9 are,
Joe, what's required? Do you have to attend the meeting in person? What do you think?
Huh?
You said what's required.
What's
And I'm
required?
asking you, do you think it should be required that a person?
They have to
that should have
attend an RTM
in-person?
meeting? Do they have to attend an RTM?
Don't answer a
meeting?
question with a question. You're good.
You have to attend the RTM meeting to vote.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the RTM.
yeah. That's, goes back to the precedent question. I agree. You've got to do it for voting in the RTM. You may as well make that a requirement for the
Well,
caucus.
we can put that in there and see what hue and cry comes up.
I'm sure it's because.
Yeah, let them hue and let them cry.
Winter,
Yeah. I mean, that's, again, it's the blue sock thing. We can put it in there
Well,
and see what.
I mean, I agree that absentee ballots and proxies shouldn't be permitted. So,
Right.
the meeting could be either remote or in person, however they want to do it, that's
Or
fine.
hybrid.
Well, still, at our United States Congress, you have to be rolled in on your hospital bed to
Yeah.
vote, or not at
All
all.
right, so,
They have their reasons, there's
Well,
lots of
it's because
experience.
people need to hear
Lots of
the
experience that
debate.
goes behind.
It's because people need to hear the debate, if you're going to make an informed vote.
if someone could help me on 8, then a quorum defined as half many members meeting in person is required for conduct. So something like that. We'll loft that up to see how it flies.
No, just attending a meeting.
Tell me-
Because the meeting can be either
Hold,
remote or in
hold,
person.
hold my hand here, tell me what to put.
A
Yeah.
quorum is defined as 1/2 of the remaining membership attending the meeting.
Yeah.
Whether in
And
person
that's it, I don't think you
or
need
on-site.
even required for the conduct of the meeting. A
What does it
quorum is-
mean, remaining? Do we need the word remaining in there?
Yeah, so people don't think they need to
Yeah,
have
but-
half of the full contingency of the district.
Yeah,
Right, but you already put attending the meeting, so that would be the number.
Oh, no, then that is not right, because it's got to be, it has to be half of the remaining members. who are,
Especially now.
but it can't be half the people just
You
showing
started
up.
off
Right.
with 16, and then a couple people resigned, or have never got filled.
Sure, right.
That's remains a little inaccurate for the initial one of
Right.
the year. Because the thing was really developed for somebody leaving in the middle of the year.
Yeah, it should be a period after remaining membership, and then attendance is required at the meeting in order to vote.
Yeah, and then we don't have to define what attendance is.
Right.
Attendance, that can be virtual or real.
Yeah, yeah, it's required
And
at
that
the
can be
meeting in
up
order
to
to
the
vote.
committee, you know?
Everyone still
Yeah.
knows what that is. Right. Not your face on a screen.
So 2 sentences.
Just as Jack is going to do heavy lifting on it, what I will do is to kind of clean up my notes, circulate it around. If I didn't get it right, shoot me a note. And this, I don't have to report this back to rules for another 2 weeks. So, but when I send it back to rules, then it will be I will be able to report to them, and yes, TGS&A discussed this matter and has some recommendations. And then they can.
And
help.
we'll see them before they go.
Pardon me?
We'll see those.
What I said, yes, maybe tomorrow, next day, I'll take the notes that I've been circulated among us. If I didn't get it right, like we.
So we'll have another meeting where we vote on it
Well,
before
matter
it
of fact, we
goes.
can do it on the 13th.
Yeah.
All right.
But you're
That's a
saying
good
you're
idea.
giving this to
That's
rules
fine.
before we vote on it?
Excuse me?
You give it to rules before we vote on it?
No.
No.
Oh, you just said I'll give it to
I may
somebody.
have gotten ahead of myself. When you all agree that I got it right,
Got it.
then, at the next rules meeting, I will present a short report to them saying.
Right. Because we should vote, like, when you fix it, we should vote on it before it goes to rules,
I think that's
right?
a good idea. And
Yes.
since we're going to
Rather
probably
than, like,
meet on
kind
the
of-
13th,
Yes,
these things can be in parallel.
yes.
Big vote on the 13th. Everybody mark your calendars.
Pardon me?
Mark your calendars on the 13th. Big
Yeah.
vote.
All right, let's come down the home stretch here. Non-attending calls and vote by written absentee vote. I don't think that's out, right?
Yeah, 9 is gone. The next one is in the absence of the district chairs, and we should add, and the vice chair. Because why do you have if you have a
Yeah.
vice chair and they're
Yeah.
attending the caucus, then they
Okay.
should run it.
Okay,
Down here, 8.
that's a good idea. I mean, all right. Number 11. Let's get some consensus on that. Candidates are not required to attend the interviews by the caucus, but may do so in person or electronic. This come up because there's an excellently qualified person who submitted their resume, but were unable to attend the caucus meeting. Are they cut? Well, this one is to address that issue.
I'm more sympathetic to this than the whole, like.
Yeah,
you know,
tell us, did you attend?
No, I attended in person. I think the two people that, like me and the other individual, like went in person. But like, if it's a situation like this, that's different than having the quorum with all the members of the district. You know, because it's not a double standard, unless, of course, personally, I think you're putting yourself at a disadvantage if you're
Yeah.
dialing in and they're doing an in-person meeting. And there's always the risk that like the person who's trying to, you know, dial in, there's like a, you know, malfunction with IT and they can't actually present. So then you're even more at a disadvantage. Whereas like in the quorum situation, I guess we haven't really distinguished. We just said you could do in person or remote. But it gets a little questionable if you say you have to have an in-person quorum and the remaining people can dial in remotely. That's, I don't think we should decide.
The genesis of this comment
Yeah, you said-
was that one district
Yeah.
had a excellently qualified person who was in Cambodia or something like that night. And the district chair had a problem to try to sort out whether that was a valid candidacy or not, because the person had submitted their paperwork, but they're not able to attend the meeting. So the question went to town council. Town council, in all his wisdom, said, whatever the district decides.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So rather than be in that same sort of situation, our invitation is to say,
Well, why
all
would
right,
they
does the
schedule
person,
a
is,
caucus
did they
on a
just-
does the person have to be there or not?
Did they just leave the position vacant?
Yes.
Oh,
They
wow.
passed it out, it was a boneheaded, knuckleheaded
Right.
thing that
I mean, do
we
we
don't
have
have, we don't have that excellent qualified person on RTM. So
Okay.
if we can speak to that topic by number, whatever it is, number 11.
And is there a vote being taken in this interview process, or is this just everyone being able to meet this person via Zoom or whatever?
There's usually a vote,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
at the end
Yeah,
of
you
it?
There
vote
is a
them
vote.
in, yeah.
Well, can you separate the interviews from the vote, or no?
So
But
the
the
notion
candidates don't
is-
vote, so they don't really need to be there. I mean, you're stupid if you don't want to come unless you have a real commitment, conflict, but,
Well, if you're in Cambodia,
Right.
and there's no helping it.
I mean, why the chair set up a meeting when the
Well-
candidate was going to be out of the country?
Right, that,
I
I
don't
don't,
know.
Well, that's what, I'm
That
trying
kind
to
of
put
is the
together
primary
what's the problem.
issue.
Why is this hard?
Right, exactly.
So we come down to, does the candidate have to attend or not?
I would say they don't have, in my opinion, they don't
Right.
have to, like,
Yeah,
it might be
doesn't help them,
advisable,
But yeah.
but,
It's up to the district.
If-
Okay, well,
if we're gonna say
the way this
anything-
is written, I'm not required, another
I
way
guess
of
it's up
writing
to
Yeah,
the
I
it.
wouldn't
district
make that
chair.
a hard
The district chair could have
yeah.
could schedule the caucus when the person
Right.
is
So,
available. I don't-
The
That's
way
at the
11
discretion
works
of the
is-
District chair. But why don't we say, if we're going to put in
11
anything-
works is a little convoluted. Another way of rephrasing 11 is candidates are not required to attend the caucus.
Well, if we're going to say anything, why don't we say that candidates are encouraged to, but are
Yes.
not required to attend the caucus, period?
Right.
And as long as you have a quorum to conduct a meeting of any sort, that's
Right.
fine too, right?
But, yeah, but I
Right,
don't
I
even
mean,
see a reason
it
for
might
saying
be
this,
a
to be
rules for
honest. I mean, this is
quorum.
just kind of dumb.
But we have rules for it.
Yeah,
It's
Listen,
my honest
that-
opinion.
we're doing dumb, okay?
No, yeah,
We're-
if we just
we're
make this
doing
thing happen, it's
What we've been
fine.
asked to
Like,
do,
if
to
you
put
want to
it
fill the position.
in, so that futures won't
What
have the
happens when you
problem.
talk about
Uh-huh.
something
We're
for
doing
I mean, I think the ordinances
Yeah.
should be a little,
Yeah.
like, just a cut above that. Maybe not too much more above,
You
but
have to remember the goal, yes.
All right, so in the blue sock mode, you'll see me writing down candidates are encouraged to attend the caucus.
But not required to.
It's-
But not required.
Encouraged but not required.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay. This has been a long meeting.
I'm starting to feel
Appreciate-
pressure to wear blue socks next time.
Appreciate-
I mean,
Your endurance. Looking at the agenda, there was a item here called Part 2, Town Meeting Membership and Voting Rights, modification to that section, which will be on the table probably at our next meeting, which has to do with encouraging people to renew their, for an incumbent to declare that they would like to stand for election again without going and getting 25 votes has become sort of a problem with the, and timing of write-in, people declaring for write-ins has become problematic for everybody because of the introduction of early voting. And in an effort to untangle that mare's nest, we will tackle that next time, not tonight. With that, I'm going to thank our friend Tyler Stimson, who's been faithfully recording this. And in that it's a special meeting, we can't talk about things that are not on the agenda. I'm sorry.
Oh, shoot,
So
I
in
wanted
that
to talk
case-
for like another hour.
I know, we all have so many things to talk
So
about.
much more talking.
In that case, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Second. I motion.
Second?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thank you.